There is a specific vibration that travels up a hickory wood handle when a steel blade hits a stalk of wheat that is perfectly dead ripe. It is not a thud. It is not a slice. It is a hollow, resonant shiver that tells your hands, before your eyes even see the grain fall, that the harvest is good. To distinguish that specific vibration from the dull resistance of green wheat or the brittle snap of rot took 5 years of blisters to learn. It took 10,000 swings to understand. And that vibration was the telegraph line between the earth and the man. It meant bread for the winter. It meant the mortgage was paid. But today, you and I buy bread in plastic bags. We swipe screens. We tap keys. That connection, that physical conversation between the human nervous system and the food that keeps it alive, has been severed. We have traded the swing for the scroll. But in 1848, on the cusp of a mechanical revolution, one man named Silas Thorne stood in a field in Virginia, and holding a tool that was about to become a relic, knowing something we have all forgotten. To understand the year 1848, you must first understand the silence. Today, our rural landscapes are filled with the drone of diesel engines, the beep of reversing trucks, the roar of combines. But the wheat field of the mid-19th century was a place of quiet terror. The terror didn't come from predators. It came from the calendar. Wheat does not wait. Once the grain hardens, you have a window of perhaps 10 days before the heads become too heavy, the necks break, and the grain shatters onto the ground, lost forever to the mud and the mice. She turns gold on a Tuesday. By Friday, she's whispering, "If you ain't laid her down by next Monday, she'll bury you." Silas Thorne was a master cradler. In the hierarchy of agricultural labor, the cradler was the aristocrat of the field. He didn't just cut, he composed. The tool in his hand was not a simple scythe. And it was a cradle scythe, a heavy, cumbersome contraption of blade and wooden fingers designed to catch the falling grain and lay it in a perfect, neat row for the binders who followed. It weighed 12 pounds. He would swing it roughly 10,000 times a day. The physics of the cradle scythe are unforgiving. It is an extension of the human spine. If you fight the weight of the tool, you will be crippled by noon. If you try to muscle through the cut with your shoulders, you will tear your rotator cuff before the dew has dried. The secret, which Silas knew in his bones, was the pendulum. You had to become a clock. Young ones, they try to chop at it, like they're killing a snake. You don't kill the wheat. You dance with it. You let the weight of the heel do the work. If you're sweating by the first hour, you're doing it wrong. This is the violation of our modern expectation of hard work. We imagine grunting, straining, explosive effort. But the master reaper moved with a fluid, liquid grace. It was a trance. But the stakes were absolute. Every stalk left standing was money lost. Every messy pile that the binders couldn't tie quickly meant a bottleneck. And in 1848, with the clouds gathering in the west, a bottleneck meant starvation. There is a sound that defined the anxiety of August for 3,000 years. It is the sound of stone on steel. Shak-kik. Every 15 minutes, the reaper must stop. And the silica in the wheat stems is essentially glass. It dulls the finest steel in moments. The reaper pulls the whetstone from his pocket, often kept in a water-filled horn on his belt to keep the stone lubricated, and hones the edge. It was the only break allowed. And it wasn't a rest. It was a reset of the mind. The stone tells you the truth. If the blade sings high, she's thin. If she sings low, she's ready to bite. You stop sharpening, you stop cutting. You stop cutting, you stop eating. Silas stood at the edge of the land, the section of the field assigned to him. Behind him, the binders, usually women or younger men, waited. They were the audience to his performance. If he went too fast, they couldn't keep up. If he went too slow, they stood idle. He was the conductor of the harvest orchestra. He planted his feet. He twisted his torso. The scythe went back. The swing of a cradle scythe is a full-body rotational movement. It generates significant centrifugal force. When Silas released that force into the standing grain, the sound was a crisp hiss. Whoosh, the cut, crunch, the deposit, step, the advance, repeat, for 10 hours. This was the flow state a century before psychologists named it. There was no room in Silas's mind for the past or the future. There was only the arc, the geometry of the cut, the specific angle required to slice the hollow straw at a 45-degree bias to minimize resistance. Your mind goes away. It leaves your head and goes into the grass. You stop thinking about the heat. You stop thinking about the ache in your hip. You just become the swing. But the meditation has a price. By 10 a.m., the sun in Virginia is a physical weight on the shoulders. The humidity turns the air into soup. The chaff, the tiny razor-sharp particles of the wheat casing, flies into the air. It sticks to the sweat. It works its way down the collar. It itches like fiberglass. Yet, Silas does not stop. And to break the rhythm is harder than to maintain it. This is what we have lost: the capacity for sustained, monotonous, physically demanding focus. We crave novelty. Silas craved consistency. He was cutting 4 acres a day. That is the equivalent of walking 5 miles while swinging a 12-pound weight every 2 seconds. It is an athletic feat that would break a modern CrossFit champion in 40 minutes. Silas was 62. There comes a moment in the reaper's day, and usually around the 7th hour, which the old hands called the blank. The body has exhausted its glucose reserves. The muscles are running on fumes. The conscious mind shuts down to preserve energy. You don't look at the end of the row. You never look at the end. You look at the next 3 feet. That's all the world is. 3 feet of gold. In this state, the reaper becomes incredibly sensitive to the environment. Silas could feel the slight change in density of the wheat where the soil was wetter. He could hear the difference in the wind direction before the trees moved. He was not just working on the land, he was plugged into it. This intimacy created a strange form of love. You cannot spend 10 hours a day touching every single stalk of a plant without developing a reverence for it. This wasn't just product, it was life. But in 1848, the sky was changing. And I don't just mean the weather. While Silas fought the approaching storm, desperate to get the last acre into stooks before the rain could ruin the drying grain, a different kind of storm was brewing in the workshops of Chicago and Virginia. A man named Cyrus McCormick had been tinkering. He had failed for years. His father had failed before him. But finally, they had cracked the code. They had built a machine that could do the work of 10 Silases. I heard tell of it. A contraption, pulls by horse, cuts with teeth. They say it clatters like a bag of skeletons. The satisfaction of the hand reaper is absolute. You turn around and you see what you have done. It is tangible. It is undeniable. The chaos of the standing field has been ordered by your hand. Silas drank warm water from a jug. He wiped the chaff from his neck. He had won the day. His body was broken, screaming in a dozen places, but his spirit was full. This is the reward in the hero's journey of labor, and the pain is the price of the peace that follows. But Silas didn't know that this specific peace, the silence of the finished field, was about to go extinct. The rumor arrived on a Tuesday. The reality arrived on a Thursday. A demonstration. The McCormick Reaper. It was ugly. It was loud. It required horses to be whipped because the drag of the machine was heavy. It didn't have the grace of the swing. It had the brutality of the gear. Silas watched from the fence line. He held his own scythe, and the hickory handle smooth from years of his own sweat. He felt a mixture of curiosity and dread. It doesn't look right. It tears at it. There's no respect in it. We often think of the Industrial Revolution as a sudden boom, but for the men on the ground, it was a slow, creeping realization of obsolescence. The machine entered the grain. Clack, 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 clack. There was no rhythm. There was only noise. Silas watched as the machine chewed through a swath that would have taken him an hour. and it did it in 10 minutes. The machine didn't care if the wheat was dead ripe or green. It didn't feel the vibration. It didn't know if the ground was uneven. It just consumed. For the crowd, it was a miracle. For the farmer who owned the land, it was profit. For Silas, it was a funeral. Not for himself, but for the art. He knew, standing there, that the swing was dead. The meditative state, the connection to the earth, the silence of the field, it was all being traded for speed. Silas realized that the machine could cut the wheat, but it could not know the wheat. It cuts. Aye, but it leaves the soul of the grain behind. It's just taking. It ain't harvesting. It's taking. This was the wisdom he carried back, the realization that efficiency is the enemy of intimacy. When we speed things up, we stop feeling them. The machine saved the grain from the rain, yes. It fed millions. It allowed cities to grow and civilizations to expand. We cannot argue against the math. Scythe. But we can mourn the music. Within a decade, the cradle scythe was hanging on the walls of barns, gathering dust. The men, like Silas, with their lopsided muscular development and their intuitive knowledge of stem density, faded away. The sound of August changed from the hiss of the blade and the shak-kick of the stone to the roar of the combustion engine. We gained cheap bread. We gained time. But what did we do with that time? Did we use it to find new ways to connect with the world? Or did we just fill it with more noise? Today, if you drive past a wheat field, you see a factory without a roof. But somewhere in our genetic memory, there is a ghost. It is the ghost of the rhythm. We feel it when we do repetitive tasks, raking leaves, chopping vegetables, walking long distances. That desire to fall into a trance, to let the body take over, to find the swing. It is the Zeigarnik effect of our species, an unfinished task of physical connection that we can't quite close. Yet we are tired, not because we work too hard, but because our work has no rhythm. It has no shiver in the handle. Silas Thorne died in 1862. The scythe remained on the wall. The sharpness of its blade is gone. The hickory is brittle. But if you were to take it down and hold it in your hands, you might find that your body knows what to do. Because the machine can harvest the crop, but only the human can harvest the meaning. The question is, are you listening for the noise, or are you listening for the swing?